Hey everyone, since my last video we had a unusual and maybe unprecedented sell-off in China tech. So this is kind of the backdrop against what I'm going to talk about in this video, which will be more about the sub-brands and what's going on with Tesla earnings and NIO, where the whole industry is. It's just a bit of a reflection as of where we are now, and what takes a role here or plays a role here is the situation where we are now with the stock markets, which I think are really leaning a lot, maybe too much, on one side. What you're seeing here is a chart comparing QQQ to CQQQ, and it's just a proxy for me. I mean, you could use other indices like SPY or KWEB and so on to compare, but basically what you're seeing is a comparison between the valuations of US tech versus China tech, and usually they have been kind of range bound, between those levels here, the red lines where you can see there, and they've been actually starting to break out to the upside in favor of US tech versus China tech, basically since the Fed really went hard on raising rates, and so that led to an exodus of foreign direct investment in China and foreign capital in China, and also a risk aversion, I would say. And the trade has been long US, and it's been, just if you look at this chart, it looks a little bit bubbly to me. Yeah, you can tell me what you want about reasons for this outperformance of US stocks, saying like the US economy is much stronger now. The China GDP only came in at 5.2, beating the government targets, but all sorts of arguments are being made out there that the Chinese economy is actually in a weak position right now and not that strong, and there are issues with the property sector and so on. Yeah, I guess I get it. There is a bearish view out there, and there's lots of negative sentiment towards China right now. But I would say, just looking at this, this rather looks unsustainable to me. Like, tell me what you think about it in the comments, really. But I would say that this rather looks like an imbalance that sooner or later will correct to the other side again. But this is just my personal opinion. This is why I think currently we're not really looking at a price discovery that we usually have in a market. It's rather sentiment driven. It's really at the edge of both trades, long US and short China, which due to many reasons currently is in favor and makes a lot of sense. But for me, these are usually those kind of special situations where I'm looking at hoping to get some bargains, which may ultimately not play out. I mean, it's very risky. I'm not advising you to follow me in there, but just, as I'm always transparent on the channel, I've started to buy NIO stock again since a very long time, actually. So I always said, like, I have this long position in one portfolio, which I'm not about to touch because it's at a nice average. And then I also have a short-term portfolio in which short-term I'm usually trading a couple of months in there for a position, or could be even more than a year. So I'm not saying that this is the very bottom right now. I might do a special video looking maybe a little bit more into those reasons and the technical fundamentals and so on. Just telling you where I am currently in this really special time in my point of view. But now let's get back to a couple of more fundamentals, despite the fact that really I would say this price action currently is really not related to fundamentals anymore. If you see, like, not speaking of NIO here even, but if you look at other tech companies in China where the valuations are, it's really hard to argue this with a low logical reasoning that this is still based on fundamentals. But coming back to the EV industry, which is also facing some issues overall with yesterday we had Tesla earnings, and by the way, I'm still a Tesla shareholder, but as I mentioned in my Patreon community, I've started to reduce my risk here a little bit in terms of exposure to Tesla. I'm becoming a little less bullish on the prospects of Tesla, and overall, I think that's the kind of the sense of the market currently, or investors in general, reflecting in the stock price, unfortunately, as well. I do think, though, that the earnings yesterday have been, at least in my personal expectations, better than in many areas, like there were some positives, like the cash balance, like the margin recovery on the automotive side, stuff like that was quite good. But overall, following closely the Chinese sector and what's ahead, I'm getting a little bit more aware of the difficulties for Tesla in the future, possibly both on the tech side, like AI and FSD, in which I think, at least in China, the local players have outperformed Tesla, frankly, and might be a regulatory thing, and as well on the fundamentals in terms of sales and revenues and margins. It might become more and more difficult for Tesla, unfortunately. And that doesn't necessarily mean that this is an upside for NIO. However, I just do think, given the stock price valuation of NIO, the downside currently is, well, yeah, you could sort of say still very risky, because it's a company that technically could still go bankrupt, right? Because they haven't proven that they're on a path to profitability, and we're still lacking that information. And I think investors are very short-term oriented right now and really don't believe that NIO could achieve that. But on the other hand, it's so beaten down in terms of valuation and the stock price, and now maybe in the storm of people starting to question whether or not EVs have a bright future, it's obviously in a bad situation in terms of a stock, right? And so we see that in the stock price. But now, in terms of the general outlook, I think this EV topic is far from over. I still think that EVs are the future. And just because the technology is so overwhelmingly better than ICE cars. And I get that there are many, both from investor as well as industry side, like with the GM, Ford, and so on, scaling down their EV efforts and so on. The sense overall is like, well, maybe EVs will not be the future. But I do think still, despite maybe incentives coming down, despite more issues here on the cost side and competitive side, ultimately there is no way besides converting to fully electric. And so that I think still is a large opportunity for Tesla, despite all of the growing pains right now. And this, what Elon Musk said in the earnings call, is a gap or a time now in between two different S curves or growth curves. So it's currently a little bit flattening out. And I think that the next battleground actually will be the sub-brands. So that kind of what Elon Musk certainly starts pushing out yesterday. Whereas I remember earnings calls when they said, oh, we're not working on a 25K car. And then again, kind of now switching to, oh, it's actually, we should have such kind of a car. We see it's necessary because BYD is now taking over. And BYD, I think, possibly having a better position right now of capturing more markets in the short term, simply because of the fact that they are in lower tier customer segments and can expand to Southeast Asia quicker. And so I think Tesla now recognized that they have something missing here. Now we have the situation that both Tesla and NIO are actually working on, cheaper brands, or not cheaper brands, cheaper cars, I should say, because for Tesla it's most likely not going to be a sub-brand. And for NIO, we've got conflicting information. So for one, I think, that's my personal opinion, I think actually Alps is ready, pretty much ready, could be released any day in terms of the product validation and possibly also capacity for build up for a small ramp. But it seems like Lieben and the management hasn't decided yet whether or not they're gonna release it short term, in the beginning of this year or later on. It seems it's that was from another interview that they are in kind of a wait and see situation right now, and possibly that is due to the fact that they have now also raised more capital, and with around 8 billion, depending on how the outflow will be in the next coming quarters, will be in a situation that they kind of can endure a longer competitive fight, also even with lower numbers in this highly competitive market in China, where they don't face immediate pressure to do something, right? Because still got much more money in the bank in order to try some stuff out. So why would you want to shoot your last bullet when at the same point Tesla is about to release their sub-brands in 2025, at least not the sub-brands again, the cheaper car, I should say. And interestingly, they're going to build it in the US and that's what Musk said, the option to also build it in Mexico later on. And that's interesting because it seems that Elon Musk has stopped trusting the Chinese market. He spoke about how competitors are copying what they are announcing in some of the presentations, for example, the AI presentations. And I guess a large part why they are doing that now in the US is possibly that they are afraid of IP leaving Tesla somehow and the Chinese becoming closer to catching up. And I guess they want to have some sort of a head start. And that means we're now in a situation where possibly the Chinese, including NIO, don't really know what Tesla will be releasing as a cheaper car. And at the same time, NIO having like two sub-brands in the starting position here, but uncertain how, where, and yeah, with what kind of a strategy they're going to announce it into the market. But that seems to be the next battleground, because if we're looking a little bit at the data here, what's of course interesting for NIO is, and I think I've shown this chart before, which is done by Thinkercar, that NIO is actually really good at dominating the various segments which they're in, most importantly the 400k plus, which it is leading as the number one car. I just also saw this other chart here, which is about just Guangzhou in this province where NIO comes in at number one before Tesla even in 300,000 RMB and above. So what it basically shows is that NIO is able to be the number one in China in the segments that they're competing. And now the big question mark is whether or not an introduction of the sub-brands Alps and Firefly could actually come in just here at the bottom. Maybe they're not good enough at marketing them, or could NIO, due to the fact that they have those really great designs, a good brand now by now, and also possibly with the sales team built up, a better marketing go-to-market strategy, actually play a role with those major players. And for me, it's kind of a difficult situation here right now because, of course, I'm invested in both companies, and I've always stated the fact that I'm mainly invested in NIO because of the NIO brand, right? I still believe that over time, this more conservative and difficult to converting segment of ICE car ownerships in the where the BBA, the legacy brands are active. These are more conservative buyers. These are not the early adopters. These are people who are paying lots of attention to brand and to face giving, to luxury features and so on. And that's where currently NIO is competing. And in the EV part, they're doing well. However, the EV part is not growing as much currently because the ICE cars are having a little bit of a comeback right now. After the chip shortages are solved and so on, it seems like ICE cars, also with lots of discounts and so on, with that help, are getting some traction currently. But I think this will be possibly, and I hope it actually, I'm not saying it will be, but it's my take that this will not be a long-lasting trend, and that ultimately we'll see, again, more and more of those ICE owners converting to EV. But now, of course, the difficulty is that or for NIO in this sub-segment, these buyers, they don't care so much about the topic of luxury features, brand design, and so on. It's really much more about price and pragmatism and so on. So I really do hope that NIO has something that is very pragmatic, very boring in a sense, because that was kind of my takeaway of owning or using the ET7 and the ET5. I always had this idea that the car is a bit more mass market than it really is. It's really, it's a head turner. Everywhere you go, people start talking about this car. It's very well built. It's very nicely designed, and my summary is also, it's not for everybody. So maybe, the expectations have been set wrongly here, also partly by the management saying, it's going to compete with the BMW 3 Series, but in the end, it's maybe a tiny bit more special. And so my hope would be that they hopefully have, discovered this issue, and with Alps and Firefly might be able to, put out a more boring car in a sense. That would be great, because I think that is kind of the recipe for, capturing this audience. And again, now the difficulty for me is kind of, this puts me in a perspective, or in a sentiment where I think Tesla might really face some hurdles in China. Although I do think they're still selling well. I still think they're positioned as the leader there, as a foreign brand. But if NIO has something in the books here that is really exciting that we don't know about yet, and they play it well, I think they could actually exceed the growth prospects of Tesla in China. And so, this is where I am now with all of that's what's going on in the overall context here of which stocks I'm invested in, how the pricing is between US companies and Chinese companies, the uncertainties around the global economy, about the EV sector and Chinese stocks. Maybe it's not a clear guide for you, and I cannot give you financial advice anyways, or a guide, but I just want to let you know where I am currently with my thinking, with my own money, where I put my money. And yeah, now let's see how the market's going to react today. Unfortunately, possibly not a great day in the market. Thanks for watching. Please like and share, and see you in my next videos.